There is a fifth dimension.
A dimension of sound.
Damn it, Frank! We tell him to be quiet. I spilled my hot cup of Uranus again.
A dimension of sight.
Hey, Arch. I'm gonna sock you in the puss.
A dimension of mind.
Man, Adams, is that you?
Next stop, the Twilight Zone.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Fifth Dimension of Twilight Zone podcast. Happy 30th episode recording, I guess you could say. I am your host, Nick, as always. And once again, we're here to talk about the famous Rod Serling series. This episode is his favorite in the first season. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, we're here to talk the series that is famous for, things that we didn't expect and going to places we didn't expect, especially after last week's episode. But as always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. We are on Amazon Music now, as well as Google Play, all that good stuff. If you want to find our audio feeds, remember to rate, subscribe, and hit those stars and comment, all that good stuff. But we're back. We're back to talk a classic episode of the Twilight Zone, at least in the annals of fandom for Twilight Zone. This is one that's considered a classic Twilight Zone episode.
I didn't know we were doing anal tonight.
Well,
We're doing anal and Willoughby.
Yeah, I brought the wrong lubrication for this podcast.
Just remember to push.
Yeah, push.
Astroglide.
Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, we're here to talk, Twilight Zone. So there you go. Not anal, but Twilight Zone. Maybe furries. I don't know. So, anyways, as always, as I do, I introduce my co-host. And first off is, of course, a woman that loves to go to 10 on the Windows. I didn't write this properly. A woman loves to go to 10 on the Windows meter, and now is a smooth operator. And that is Triv of Trivial Theater. What's going on, Triv?
I am smooth in all the right places.
Ooh.
And I no longer lag for longer, for longer lasting satisfaction for all involved.
Yes.
We're going to make it through this thing together, guys.
Well, I was trying to make that play off of Spinal Tap with it goes to 11, but I couldn't do it because but she didn't go to 11 in Windows. So anyways, the whole point of that introduction is Triv upgraded her system and she now is running at a smooth 30 frames a second. So yay. Triv, congratulations on that.
Cheers. I'm no longer at 15, baby. I've gone to 30.
Yeah, now you can do all kinds of crazy things in Vegas.
Well, we talked about anal already, so.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
But my other co-host is the man who loves the Sonic and his furries movies. That, of course, is Jacob of Jacob Andrews Reviews. What's going on, Jacob?
I'm doing great, and I'm a little smoother this week too, unless I cut out again. But I got better internet finally, but it's a work in progress. But it is tons better than it has been. So I'm great, and I like my Sonic and my furries.
I know, right? And Jeff, I'm sure, is excited for your new internet service so you can now see clearly.
He might even start to blink in the next few weeks, maybe. He's got dry eyes.
Yeah, I was gonna say he'll get that Visine or whatever it is that they put in your eye, the liquid stuff.
Yeah. He might get something else I soon too.
He's gonna get Ben Stein.
It just dawned on me that most people that are listening and or watching this have no clue what we're talking about because we don't really I don't do that thing. That's more of like just us thing. So they're like, what is this guy talking about? He's gonna put in that thing's eye. What are they shooting in people's eyes? And audio listeners are just totally lost. They're like, I don't know about this podcast. It's supposed to be about the Twilight Zone, but they're talking about shooting stuff in people's eyes. What is going on here?
Well, I mean, we clearly peaked at episode 1. Now it's just all downhill for 150 or 164 episodes. So,
well, technically speaking, we peaked at the Lonely because that was Jake's first episode.
This is true. Yeah. This is true. And they came on 3 episodes later, and then we just went.
Yeah, just the shitter. The algorithm said, no, that guy? No, you were on the rise.
Oh, honey, if it's just you, I don't think any of us have any room to talk.
Exactly.
We're on our way. But we're on our way to big things. We're gonna buy like a multi-million-dollar mansion.
Hell yeah.
And all live there.
Is that like a toy mansion? Multi-million-dollar toy mansion is like that big?
Well,
multi-million pennies.
I will have you know that I own a foot-by-foot piece of land in Ireland. So if we set up shop, we could always set up there in a foot-by-foot mansion.
Just build up. You know,
Yeah,
you don't- just don't build out, build up.
There you go.
But also, as we record, it's still National Beer Day. So clearly these two are the Pabst Blue Ribbon of my heart. You know, as cheap as I can
Aw.
get it, for my heart, they are the ones to do
Blue
it. So
ribbon, motherfucker.
I was
A
gonna go with,
cup
like, Miller
of
Lite.
Pabst Uranus.
yeah, Pabst Uranus Blue Ribbons or Blue Waffles, whatever you want to call it.
Oh.
Baby wants to fuck.
Oh shit.
Consider,
So
I
anyway.
think that the lady in today's episode was the opposite of wanting to fuck.
Oh, she was like the Helion of Helions, I guess you could say.
She was best friends with that one chick from that episode where the guy was in the TV show.
Yeah.
Shit, what was her name?
Was it a world? Not a world of his
A
own.
world something where he like switches dimensions or whatever, and his wife's
Yeah.
a fucking gold digger. This is her
She a
sister.
gold digger.
We needed Nan Adams to come through this bitch.
But
Well, I mean, I think Nan Adams was in this episode or something. Wasn't there something about like somebody getting hit by a car or something? Or am I thinking of a wrong episode?
You're thinking
I
of
don't
a
know.
different episode, unless
Blew
she
himself off a
showed up
train.
at the unless she showed up at the end and took care of business to finish things
Yeah.
off. Then maybe.
they thought he
Yeah.
just died from like falling off the train. He actually died by getting run over by Nan Adams. It happened off screen.
On
though,
the
so
train.
Off-screen death. Yeah. She
There you go.
ran over him on the train and knocked
He was
him
running
off the
away
train.
from her, and that's what caused it.
He
So
Tokyo drifted around the cars and knocked him off the train.
Exactly. So this episode is episode 173, 3629 is season 1, episode 30, and it's called A Stop at Willoughby. Now, as I said earlier, Triv reminded me this is Rod Serling's favorite story from this first episode, which actually is kind of surprising. Not really surprising, but kind of out of all the episodes we've watched, it's surprising that this one is his most loved. But I mean, it's a good episode. It is a really good episode, at least to me personally. But it's directed by Robert Parrish, written by Rod Serling, stars James Daly as Garrett Williams, Howard Smith as Push, Patricia Donahue as Jane Williams, and Jason Wingreen as train conductor. And so Triv, I think you said you've seen this episode probably a few times before, if I'm correct, right?
Oh yeah, and it's definitely, it sits as one of my faves. Like it is like top 5 for me as far as the episodes. So
Ooh, we're gonna have an interesting discussion. It's gonna be interesting. Especially after last week's interesting episode. But Jacob, did you remember much going into this episode at all? Do you remember anything about, I mean,
Like the first part of it, or the first half of it, it seemed familiar, but I didn't remember anything about it. And I wasn't able to pick. I mean, there are certain things I was able to figure out, but I wasn't really able to pick what was going to happen until it happened in the end. And I thought that was pretty cool. I thought the ending was going to be a bit more, without spoiling it, less somber. Not somber, less unhappy.
it definitely took a twist that for the unexpected.
Yeah, I was thinking, there was a point where I thought the episode was ending right before the inevitable ending. I thought it was just going to end like that, and that was going to be the episode. But no, they took it a step further, and I was like, oh, okay, let's go dark. Sure. But I think I do have an idea, because I read that as well, that this was Rod Serling's favorite episode from season 1, and he decided to put it close to the end of the season, because at one point he wanted it to be the first.
Yep, it was the
First
pilot
episode?
initially. They were talking about it for the pilot.
I think we'll get into it, but I think I had some ideas. I could be totally off the mark, but I have ideas why it is his favorite episode. I mean, I could be wrong. Who knows? I guess we'll see in a little bit.
I'm surprised
think-
the season finale is not his favorite episode.
Mighty Kate, no, not the Mighty Casey.
It's one before.
No, the fourth wall breaking episode.
Ah,
I don't recall that one.
Oh, it's good. That might be a top 10 episode of all time, just on this ending alone. But
I'll probably remember it when I see it.
yeah, same.
yeah, actually there is one trivia. The outdoor train station in Town Square set used for Willoughby is the same one used for the opening and closing sequence of The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which is a
Yeah.
great Western. So that's
Very,
cool.
very good. There's also a town in Ohio that let's see here, I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, they celebrate
OH.
something.
Yeah, they
Oh.
celebrate it's a yearly community event involving trains to honor of a stop in Willoughby known as Last Stop Willoughby.
Well, there's also
I
a
don't know.
movie from 2000 something that's based on this episode, a TV movie.
All I'm seeing is the fact that Rugrats and Stargate do homages to this episode.
And 30 something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, there that is. And then
Rugrats,
the guy, the creator of Mad Men, acknowledged the influence of this episode in his work, which you can definitely see it as the episode goes along.
Yeah.
And then in The Sopranos, when Tony Soprano leaves his briefcase behind, there was a thing about that too, how that pays homage.
So this episode, like I said, is very very important in the annals of Twilight Zone, which is kind of crazy when we've already had like Purple Testament and Time Enough at Last and stuff like that. But so anyways, this is an episode that is all about work life and the stresses that work life causes, and how people are put under so much pressure to do things. And this character of Garrett Williams, Gertie. But anyways, he is played by James Daly, and he is a New York advertising executive who I know we are all like this at some point, and I know everybody's gone through this. But the stress that these jobs, whether it be where I work or what you do, Triv, and what Jacob did at some point, it gets to you at some points. It makes you want to quit, and it makes you want to just punch your own boss and stuff like that. But this boss in this movie, or in this episode, who's actually he's a really fun character to watch, but it's a pretty messed up character, is played by Howard Smith, who plays Oliver Misrell. And he's the kind of executive that just like you don't want to work for. He's like, if you go to Hollywood or something like that, and it's just the stress and inducing nightmares that it just gives you. It just, the way he's like, where's this guy you were supposed to bring in? And he's like push and stuff like that. And he's one of those CEOs or head of companies that just make you want to go and jump out a window. If you remember that famous gif where the guy gets up, he's like, nope, he opens up the window, he jumps out the window. It's that type of thing. But pretty much from here, like I said, this guy is just this guy Garrett Williams is just, he looks like he's a ticking time bomb waiting to happen. Like he's just going to explode. And this is what he does. Like everything that goes down, he actually says, he calls the guy a fat boy and to shut his mouth, and then walks out of the room, which is pretty pretty insane to think about. But apparently his wife is connected somehow with the company, and I don't know. But I mean, before we get into the opening narration, like, does this give you kind of feelings of like your own bosses and stuff like that? Have you guys ever been through stuff like this before that you just want to, I mean, you don't have to go into details about where you worked or anything, but I mean, this feels so like I've seen before in many bosses I've had. But what do you guys think?
I worked over in the UK at a bed and breakfast, and the guy that I worked for had like this kind of mentality where it was just like, nothing you did was right, and everything was, now, even when you had no control over what was going on. And yeah, it was definitely that case. And I don't think that his wife is associated with the job specifically. I think it's more like she's used to a very rich like lifestyle. I think that's more what they were talking about.
He seems a bit exaggerated, but I have actually worked for people that were like just like that. They just won't let up, and they just won't give you a break. I don't mean like a break, but like when you're just like, all right, man, back up, back off, and they just won't stop. And they don't give a shit about your well-being, anybody else's well-being, or anything except for their own wants. And that's it. That's kind of what this guy was. Kind of gave me a little bit of PTSD. But oddly enough, probably the biggest asshole I ever worked for, totally unrelated, by the way, the biggest asshole I ever worked for, a guy that I literally almost got in a fist fight with at work. And it's just terrible, but I fucking hated him. We ended up being really good friends later on.
Sometimes that happens, though.
I don't know what that says about me. He was an alcoholic. So it was fun to go to bars with.
Okay, is it weird that this guy... is it weird that this guy reminded me of Sidney Greenstreet from Maltese Falcon? I don't know why. If it's just the look of him, it's the accent, it's the look, the whole like kit and caboodle. Not so much what he said, but just everything else.
I haven't seen that movie in forever. I actually own that movie. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it forever, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, like he was the big guy that was trying to track shit down. But anyway, neither here nor there.
No, one of my last bosses that I worked for was like that. It was so miserable working for him. But anyways, where are we?
Probably opening narration.
It happens a little
Yes,
bit in.
actually, well, yeah, I completely forgot about them. Thank you, Trev. Let's go ahead and head into the opening narration. We talked for a little while on bad bosses, but
Oh, it's all good. Nothing like bad bosses to remind you to do something that you want to do. This is Gart Williams, age 38, a man protected by a suit of armor, all held together by one bolt. Just a moment ago, someone removed the bolt, and Mr. Williams from him and left him a naked target. He's been cannonaded this afternoon by all the enemies of his life. His insecurity has shelled him. His sensitivity has straddled him with humiliation. His deep-rooted disquiet about his own worth has zeroed in on him, landed on target, and blown him apart. Mr. Garrett Williams, ad agency exec, who in just a moment will move into the Twilight Zone in a desperate search for survival. That is a hell of an intro.
yes.
Yes, it is.
Can we talk about like that might be one of the best intros I've ever heard in the Twilight Zone so far?
It's very
amazing.
descriptive.
It's also the first mention of the
Mhm.
Twilight Zone in like an opening narration.
Yeah.
I knew that, or I picked up on that when I watched the episode, and I looked it up, and I was like, "Yes, I was right." I didn't think this. I was pretty sure this was the first one.
It's so good. It's like here's a guy, here's a bomb. That bomb's heading into him. That bomb is of course Mizrael. This guy's going to explode into a million pieces. It's just such a good fucking like tear down of like an individual's like humanity in a nutshell. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
I love
it.
Serling's like his vernacular, the words he uses. Cannonaded. Who the fuck uses that? But
He
love
does.
it. Yeah, it makes me want to expand my vocabulary more, so I
Your
can
nom de
say
cour?
things like, yeah, disquiet.
Or nom
I
de
mean, that's probably a little bit more popular word than cannonaded, but I mean, still, I want to start using disquiet more.
It's a good word.
It is very good.
Okay, so before we get to the train stuff, can we talk about something that he says to his secretary? And I have the exact words for as he steps out of the out into the office space, and everybody's like looking at him, and his secretary comes up and she's like, you know, do you need something? And he's like, well, I need a sharp razor and a chart of the human anatomy of the arteries.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I was like, holy shit.
I mean, this episode, for as much as we talked about in the past couple episodes, there have been some very like stuff that was probably made people clutch their pearls a bit back in the day. But I mean, it gets pretty without saying, I'm going to cut a bitch or cut my own bitch. It's a way to, without saying it, he basically says it. And it was done in such a way that it was, it hits you like it's more, someone says, oh, I'm going to cut my wrists. That's one way of saying it. But this is like, it takes it to another level.
I'm a cut a bitch, and I'm the bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
but if you think about it, the stuff that Rod Serling is able to get away with in this series, I mean, this is talking about a guy who he's saying it in a stressful way. He's not actually asking for it. It's a metaphor, I guess. It's like
Right.
kill me now type of thing. But think about it. You're 1960, you're May of 1960, and your character in this TV show that your family is obviously watching for the most part, the guy says, I need a sharp razor and a chart of the human anatomy of the arteries. We're talking about 1960 people. There's not nudity going on right here, but there is some graphic content going on. And this brings up even more what we talked about last week, where if you think about it, he's able to get away with a lot in the censors that either the censors are being paid off not to do anything about, or he's just really good at the vernacular that they're just stupid enough not to understand what's going on. And I kind of love it.
I do think that, like, because we've kind of talked about this early on with the series, like there wasn't anybody, like they were watching, but they weren't as hyper focused when it wasn't quite the popular show like that it became in later seasons. So he probably had a little bit more leeway at that point in time.
I mean, I don't know if they were still filming when they aired the first episode, but I mean, this may have been filmed before anything had aired. So nobody had an eye on anything. And this was in the can waiting to just go live. Or they probably weren't expecting it. So they weren't looking for it. And when he just said that, like I said, man, back then, people just took everything at face value. So when he said, give me a human anatomy with the arteries and all that. Maybe they didn't put 1 and 1 together, or 2 and 2. What is it? I don't know. They didn't put something
Either
together.
way.
Well, I was gonna say, if you think about it, you go to to serve man. It's about human cannibalism. You know, the one with the woman who keeps seeing the vision of the hallway and her death or something like that. It's about a woman missing. It's kind of like Final Destination, where the woman is too scared to get on the plane and the plane explodes. It's in a very cheesy way, but I don't know. You're maybe right. It's crazy to think about. Just razor. But anyways, let's continue. I would talk about this for an hour if I had to, but
well, one other real quick thing I wanted to mention, like at the very beginning, you've got the pencil tap and the music matching. Like when at the very, very start, when he's in the conference meeting and they're waiting on the guy that was supposed to bring in the account. I thought that was really interesting how it was almost like a heartbeat, or it was the clock, whichever way you wanted to take it. So,
and he holds his stomach. Yeah. And he holds his stomach a lot too in the episode, which could mean many things, but
got an ulcer.
Yeah.
He needed some Pepto-Bismol.
Rod Serling's like, no, you handle that on your own. Anyway, so we get our first train sequence, and it's snowing. It's the middle of November. Mr. Williams going home to, I guess he lives in where Stanford located. Is that New York or Connecticut or something like that?
Connecticut.
Yeah,
he says Connecticut a few times.
Yeah, that's right. See,
also can I just say that the train sequence where it's like snowing every time he's on the train, like that is one really long snowstorm.
I know, right?
That's Connecticut.
Yeah.
He's been on this train so much that even the conductor knows who he is and is talking to him, and he doesn't talk to anyone else. He just talks to Mr. Williams. So but he gets on, and Mr. Williams he falls asleep, and then his boss is like, push, and yelling at him, and he's so stressed out. And it's just, there's a lot of times this happens. But first sequence is he falls asleep, he puts down the curtain, which I wish, I don't know if trains these days have curtains or whatever, but he pulls down the thing, and all of a sudden he wakes up, and he's on a 1800s train, and he's, the train has stopped, and they're saying Willoughby, stop at Willoughby and stuff like that. And he's really confused about what's going on. He talks to the conductor. He's like, there's like back and forth. He's like, so what's out there? Well, that's Willoughby, sir. But there's no Willoughby on this train track. Well, no, the Willoughby's out there. So
it's also summer. It's like like July.
Well, he's like, I like how the guy, where's Willoughby? Out there. He's like, that's kind of shit. You're like, motherfucker, you know what the hell I mean. You want to tell me it's out there? Where the fuck are we, you son of a bitch?
He's kind of cheeky.
And you can tell the conductor's in on it. He knows. He's just like, it's out there.
You think they pulled, they when he fell asleep, they injected him with something in his body, and they moved him to another train? That would
have been hilarious.
Yeah.
That's the twist in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
But he actually gets up and moves towards the between the cars, and he looks out the window as well, and it's like idyllic, and there's two boys from, of course, the Andy Griffith Show going to fish and stuff like that, and it's what everybody would like to live in this idyllic town with really nice, summer weather and a band playing and stuff like that. And all of a sudden he gets the jerk motion. All of a sudden he wakes up back in the train in the November and, snow that seems to nonstop. And it's a really jarring kind of, thing that happens in that first sequence as it, goes along. But I don't know. What do you guys think so far? Like, of that, that sequence, do you feel like that you would want to live there? What would you guys do?
I'd be bored out of my gourd if I lived in 1880.
I mean, I just recently in the past few months moved out to bumfuck nowhere and just pretty much the country. So I feel like I kind of did move to 1980. I mean, 1880 or 1980.
Can we also talk about the guy on the buggy who just turns around? He's like,
oh yeah,
he's just smiling.
All of those guys are serial killers. I guarantee you.
No, can we talk about the guy on the fucking bike with the ginormous front wheel? I just gotta ask, because I mean it's got a back wheel, but it's like this big, and I guess I've seen pictures of it. What the fuck was the purpose of that? Why did they make it so big? I mean, was that just how bikes started? And then
that's how bikes started.
maybe that wheel doesn't need to be that big. Whose idea was it to make a fucking wheel that big to begin with? I mean, somebody said, let's start big. Let's just go big or go home. Because that wheel is fucking, how do you even get on that thing?
Careful.
I mean, you're like part way all the way up the fucking wheel. You need like one of those plane stair things for private jets to get on this fucking thing. It's not a very practical mode of transportation. I do not understand it. I think it's stupid, but he was riding the shit out of it to that dirt road in that town. So good on him. I kind of want to ride one.
To the first bikes, like those kind of bikes were probably like something that someone rich would buy. That's probably where it started. So like I don't know, I don't know a ton about the history. I know they started like that and then they moved them down to more normal size wheels, but
man, that looks like some dumbass shit somebody with too much money would buy. Hey, I'm gonna buy this. Why? Just because it's fucking stupid. Nobody else has it. It's so big and gaudy. This fucking Jesus. The wheel is like the size of like a one-story home. It's ridiculous, but I don't know. That's what I noticed. You guys noticed all this other stuff. I noticed big fucking bicycle wheel, but I guess
I'll tell you the most important thing that has to do with that bike. There's an episode of The Simpsons where Homer makes fun of those people on the bike, and then he gets a knock on the door, and there's a guy on a bike that just kicks him in the face. And that's the whole point of it. It's all meant for The Simpsons. That's what I say. But to continue, so he wakes up. He asks the conductor, I think he asked the conductor about Willoughby, and the conductor says there's no Willoughby stop or whatever. You're crazy. Go talk to your wife later in the episode, like 5 minutes from now. And that's what he does. He goes and has a drink, and his wife's like, "Oh, you gonna get plastered again?" Which I think it's pretty funny. But he talks to his wife about how much stress he's under, and he hates his job, and he wants to live in this idyllic place, and he tells her about Willoughby, and he's like, I just need to live in a place where I can find a peaceful serenity, maybe find myself a bordello. I don't know, something to keep me calm. And he doesn't really say that, but
I missed that part, so maybe that's why she
same.
was so angry.
And
real quick, I do have an answer for you on the high wheeler penny farthing bike. It was developed in 1870 and had a huge front wheel which allowed the bike to travel great distances.
Penny what bike?
Penny
farthing?
farthing. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said penny farting bike. I was like,
I mean that too.
That's the greatest name ever.
No, but they provided a smoother ride on shoddy roads apparently.
Okay.
I just feel like if you have to pee, just think about how far you have to drop yourself to go down to use the restroom.
You'd also have to be rather tall to ride that sucker.
It's a conundrum.
That's all I got. I just wanted to bring that up.
No, it's a conundrum. It really is. Jacob, we're gonna have to figure this thing out. It's a conundrum. Do we put a porta potty up there? What do we do?
I just want to see somebody get on and off one of those things. Just period. I want to see how that works because I don't understand it. I don't know. There's like a little ladder on the side of it that we don't see. Penny farting bike. Right on.
Farthing.
I'm going with penny farting. That's what it is.
But his wife asks what happens to him, and I like this line. It's intake of breath for outpouring of sympathy, and somehow this guy doesn't get fired. He survives because he's so worried about losing. This guy, Mizrael, the push guy, is really worried about losing Williams. Apparently, even though he berated and said he's like the worst or whatever, and it's just like, you get to a point where even you just want to quit because your boss is just a moronic idiot. And of course his wife doesn't want him to quit, and she wants him to basically man up, take your balls and put them back in your crotch area or whatever. And it's just, I don't know. It's another female antagonist character in the Twilight Zone, basically, is how I look at it.
It's a non-Nan Adams.
Yeah.
So, okay. My problem with this is clearly this relationship has its issues. And because she comes down the stairs just like, this motherfucker again. And like, she's all like, you gonna drink yourself drunk again or all that? And she's just talking shit about this guy now, like left and right. He knows that that's how she is. I mean, I don't think it's like some revelation in this episode, to him at least, that his wife is the way she is, that she's not going to give him any fucking sympathy. And that's what this episode ultimately built to, is showing a man in early 1960s a company man showing some type of, or even nowadays, a man showing emotion, not
Mhm.
emotion, but showing weakness.
There's a vulnerability to him in this
Vulnerability.
episode.
There you go. Vulnerability. Great word. See,
I try.
Vernacular. That's what I'm talking about. But he's showing his vulnerable side, and just it's his wife. It's supposed to be the one person, because that's a thing even now today. Men showing vulnerability, even though nowadays, especially people like, oh, I want someone who shows they say feminine side or their vulnerable side and all this and that. But then when they do it, you hear all these stories about how people don't look at them the same anymore. And because that's how we are treated out there in the world as men. Not to say that, oh, woe is me, but you're
Yeah.
men as a whole. If you show too much vulnerability, people start looking at you differently. And back then especially. So I think that what I was saying earlier about how I have thoughts on why this was probably an episode that Serling liked. I think Serling did, obviously he was a stoic guy, but as we've seen in some of his writing, he did have a softer side, which I guess all men do. And I think he liked this because this was an episode that was touching on a subject that even today, 60 years later, is still a thing. But back then, it absolutely was. Men were not crying. There weren't any like Metro this, Metro that. There weren't any guys who were like, you weren't being a pansy. You were supposed to be stoic. You're supposed to go bring home the bacon. You're supposed to be hard. You were not supposed to, all this stuff, all these things he's saying, you're not supposed to feel that way. But this guy sitting here, he's like, this is my wife, this is love of my life. This is the one person I can open up to and speak to. And that makes sense in most relationships, I guess. But clearly this guy has to know that his wife ain't the one, because like he just starts pouring out to her and then acts surprised when she's like, get the fuck out of my face.
Well,
when your balls drop out of your ass, I'll be up in the room. Just call me, you lazy piece of shit. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe, why won't she just listen to me? I'm like, dude,
Well,
I mean, I get you're wanting to outpour and all, but you had to have known that she was going to respond that way.
I think too, and this is like outside observation, but I mean, it was even in the opening dialogue or the opening monologue about how like he lost his armor. And I think to some extent that did come into play where he was put in a spot that he got a downright dressing down in that meeting. And I think that he probably had it in a way that he hadn't had it before. So a lot of times with his relationship with his wife, I would bet that there was a lot of it that bounced off of him. But he's in that state, like you say, that extra vulnerable state where it hits deeper because he doesn't have the control of, I am, I'm man, hear me roar kind of a thing.
Maybe he was thinking that would be the thing that she would stop and maybe let her guard down, her armor down a little bit and show a softer side. And nope. She was stop being a bitch.
Well, hell, Wikipedia even says another argument with his shrewish wife, cold and uncaring. She makes him see that he is only a money machine to her. And he talks about it. I know I have this written down wrong, but he talks about Willoughby as an idyllic town. It was a summer, kids barefooted, fishing pool. I have the painting, I think wrong, Curtin Ives painting, which is like the Serenity paintings from like 100 years ago.
Curtin Ives,
okay. And he says he was a guy born too late, a guy who lives with, or she says he was a guy born too late, a guy who lives with a horse pulling ice, and she calls him Huck Finn. I don't know if that's an insult, but that seems like
it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it was of that 1800s era. Like it was simple and uneducated.
Simple, uneducated country bumpkin.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But one other thing too. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think I read too much into this. Like I've seen this episode so many times, and I've tried to I was trying to analyze it, and I'm pretty sure I overanalyzed. But he goes from talking about how if I left, when he was trying to describe why he wasn't fired, he's like, the boss figured that if I left, I'd take a lot of business with me because he's good at his job. So he's kind of got that shark side of himself, and then he goes and dealing with all the vulnerabilities and stuff. So it's almost like he's fighting himself a bit, like what side that he is.
Or he's just been in that game so long he knows.
Yeah.
He even said, you want this, you want that. I've been doing this, I've been being this person, but that ain't me. I don't have all this ambition that everybody says I'm supposed to have that I've been showing. It's all fake. So he probably knows how to play the game. He just don't want to play the game.
Right.
Well, that's the
Because
funny thing.
Mad or like Madison or the Mad Men advertising world in New York. I mean, even if it's just a fraction of what it was shown to be in Mad Men and things like this, I mean, yeah, this shit's cutthroat.
Well, it kind of makes you wonder, like what led him to this? Was it just the many years of just being under so much stress that he just finally snapped? Because we're kind of put right into the middle of the situation, and we're given a lot of stuff in the opening narration, but it's just, you kind of wonder like how long has he been dealing with it? How long has he been an ad exec or whatever he's been doing? I mean, he talks to, as we learn later on, he talks to a couple of phone people on the phone. It just makes you wonder like how long this has been leading to this situation that would make you kind of question, like, is it just his final just wanting to escape to another reality?
Well, he's 38, so probably the better part of 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's just been building. And this is ultimately just a portrait of a guy who's having a fucking nervous breakdown. Yeah. And he's just sick of it, and it's all mounted on him so long. And I could only imagine, like, back then, once again, even nowadays, even though there's support and people that, at least on the surface, will say, oh, it's okay. Nowadays, back then, especially as a guy, not to say women didn't have their hardships as well, but this particular type of situation, in this particular type of situation, yeah, as a guy, you couldn't talk to other guys because they were like, somebody might be listening. Stop being a bitch. You couldn't talk to women because they'd be like, stop, you little bitch.
Stop being a bitch.
Yeah, stop being a bitch. You couldn't talk to anybody. There was no one you could talk to. So you just had to hold it up in there. And that probably just made them, suicide rates are probably, for these types of people, they were up there. I mean, you hear about the people like on Wall Street jumping out of bridge or out of windows and shit. That's why they were all fucking their secretaries.
Well, yeah, it definitely was. I mean, women had their own set of things. Like there was a fight that they had to, they had to put on that level of armor to be able to, fight everything. But yeah, it was a totally different thing than what a guy was dealing with at that point.
And I do think also because they were all to your point, both sides. When I say sides, that sounds like they're at odds.
No,
both men and women both had shit they were dealing with. They felt as if there was nowhere they could go with if they would just put that shit away and just they could, and still even till this day, they could just go to each other. Just saying. I mean, nobody wants a whiny little bitch either way. Let's be real.
There's balance.
But it's okay. Yeah, it's okay to open up and let some stuff out. Yeah. I mean, and I wouldn't say he was to whiny little bitch territory as of yet. I mean, if he did that shit every day, at some point it's like, okay, dude, man up, make a fucking decision what you're gonna do. But yeah. He had to, I mean, I get where he was coming from because when it comes to work, I've been in that situation. I was in a career for 20, fucking hated. I made good money. I was pretty much this, except my wife wasn't great. Well, the first time around she was, but my wife wasn't a psycho or just like a gold digger. I'm seeing more and more parallels with the original relationship I had. But anyway, I was in a job, a profession, a career that I made really good money. I provided all that. I did everything you're supposed to. And on the outside, it seemed like, oh, you're successful. You're doing everything you're supposed to. But I fucking hated it. I was miserable on the inside. And every day I felt like this guy. I'd just be sitting there like, ugh. And it's like, who do you talk to? I don't know. You don't fucking know. Even today, 60 years later, I don't know who the fuck you talk to. I mean, yeah, sure, there's people you can, but you don't ever really feel like most people are listening. And once again, back then, you feel that way because nobody was.
and the ability to be able to be a man and yet be vulnerable. I mean, like you say, it's something that I mean, I remember stories of my dad and grandpa. I mean, there was like, you cried at like the birth of your kids, your wedding maybe, and like the death of like your parents, or if you lost siblings or whatever. Like, you don't cry, you don't it
could only be a stoic cry. Like, you got to be like stone faced and like a tear or something comes out.
Exactly.
And the sad thing is I've already said this, but they say it's not. It's kind of still that same way. It's kind of still that same way. And as this episode went on, I was like, man, this is some like real topical shit right here. Because talk about all the things this episode could be about. That's the biggest thing that stood out to me, was about this man having a nervous breakdown and nowhere to go to, and he was vulnerable, found himself in a vulnerable situation, and there was nowhere he could go, and how relatable and kind of fucked up and sad that is, and how it's still a thing today. Because that is no shit. It's funny that we watched this episode and we're talking about this because it wasn't even that long ago. I was listening to another, I think it was a podcast or video or something, and they were talking about this very thing. Telling men they want them to be vulnerable and everything, but when they open up and start being vulnerable, as I said, people just don't look at you the same way anymore.
Yeah.
So we just
Well,
don't. We just
no,
don't do it.
Well, and the thing is, you've got people, you've got the whole like spectrum of people. You've got the ones that overshare. You've got like that stoic thing that comes down from generation to generation, and they don't change because their parents were that way and they don't know how to. And then you get the range of people in the middle that, you know, or go from slightly less stoic to slightly, you know, they're slight oversharers as compared to, you know, overshare everything. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I will say though, and I know you brought this up too, but I do think like it was like, and I think they mentioned it again in the opening monologue too, but like when his when he lost his last fuck, he lost his last fuck. Like, there was no like, and you could see when he was on the phone with like the two different phone calls and then his bitchy secretary trying to tell him shit. Like there was no middle ground there. It was like he lost the ability to handle all of that stuff.
I was expecting him to jump out the fucking window at that point.
Now that's perchance.
He said there with he said there with those phones. He's like, "Fuck you, fuck you." And once again, parallels to my own life because that's what happened to me. I just fucking lost it. I mean, all those years, and finally, I was just like, "Oh, look right there! Everybody, look at it. That is my last fuck leaving the motherfucking building." And now it's on.
Yeah. It's amazing they let him get away with saying fuck that many times in a 60s show.
It was the 60s. There was a lot of acid going on.
There was a lot of fucks going on.
Yeah. So okay. So let's get. We're not even at the act break yet, this is a long act break. No, it's fine. It's fine. So Williams, a week later, back on the train, decides to take another nap, finds himself back at Willoughby, and you know,
is it a week later?
It's still snowing.
Yeah.
Damn, I thought it was like the next day.
No, it's because even the conductor's like, it's been a week. Have you been back to Willoughby yet? Yeah.
Oh.
But he looks out and he sees like there's a band playing in the gazebo and it's idyllic again. He, you know, gets up and walks towards the between the cars again, and he just stands there and like, I guess you still need to fill out like 15 minutes more of the episode, but you know, he's standing there, he looks and tries to say something to the conductor. He wakes up again. He's gotten a little bit farther, but he wakes up again, and he actually I think he's actually screams out Willoughby or something like that to the
he yells conductor.
Yeah. And
so do you think that was his indecisiveness, his indecision to get off the train because he initially wanted to, went back and grabbed his bag and all that, and then he like started freaking out when he was going to get off? Do you think that was supposed to be? Do you think that played into that part of it, or do you think it was more surface level, like he was afraid to get off, or was it supposed to show that he? I don't know. What did that mean?
I honestly, I have an idea what I think it means, but that would mean we had to reveal the ending, which I don't want to get to just yet. I
was trying to be cagey with that. Like, do you think it was a subconscious thing? Like he wasn't quite ready for that. Like all of this was subconscious.
It's similar to, you know, when you think about doing something and you have either two decisions: you do it or you don't do it, and however you decide affects the state of your being. It's like, you know, buying a car or something like that. You know, you go in, you buy that car, you don't buy that car, and however it plays out. But that's like a very simplified version to what's going on here, but that's how I come off of it with it.
He's really indecisive. He's that guy who walks around the store with that one thing in his hand he wants to buy, and then right there at the end he goes and puts it down on the wrong fucking counter. Like he's like, oh.
I took it more as like, you know, in Stargate, like when they fire up the Stargate and the guy comes out and like touches the actual Stargate pool thing and then pulls his hand back. Like that was more kind of what I took it as. It's like stepping into the like dipping your toe in the shallow end of the pool.
It's like that time when you look at in Morbius when you're deciding whether you're going to float against the train in the winds there, you know, that type of thing. I don't know where I'm going.
Both involve a train, so makes sense.
So, anyways, 17 minutes into the episode, I actually was wondering, like, when did the act break happen? Did I forget to put it down? No, it happened 17 minutes of the episode. So, with that said, we've gotten most of our material out of this episode, except for the big reveal at the end. What did you guys think of that 17-minute act structure that was happening? Did you get what you needed? Was it working? So
the one thing I will add is because they cut on a close-up of his face when he says, next time I'll go to Willoughby.
Yeah.
He had tears in his eyes, and it was relatively subtle, but they were still, I mean, maybe I don't know. I feel like I overanalyzed this episode too much. Like, I was going back and forth. I probably watched it 3 times to just like go through the different theories that were going through my head to try and figure out what the real in-depth stuff was on it, which is silly, but
did one of the theories involve bacon? That's all I'm wondering.
No, I'm afraid
What?
not.
I mean,
chocolate covered bacon.
No,
I think I do think that it was him subconsciously making that decision that he finally makes in the end. And when he, like you said, I didn't notice the tears, but that knowing that now that he probably had just, because I think the first time when he got off, he was like, I want to do that. I feel like I have nowhere else to go. Well, let me go home and try one time. And then he goes and he tries again, and he's just like, oh, no, I have no other way. This is the only way. The only way out is Willoughby.
Yeah. It wasn't so much tears. It was like when you start to well up in your eyes. So it was like there was again, maybe I'm overanalyzing, but I don't know.
That's what we do.
Once again, it's like when I watched The Unbearable Weight of Whatever, and I had tears in my eyes because Nicolas Cage was in it, or when the final conclusion to Morbius happened, and I was like, thank God it's over.
Okay, I've not seen that one yet, so thanks for
Morbius?
Yeah, I've not seen it yet.
Consider yourself lucky.
Like I said, it's a long act, so I mean, there's a lot of stuff they get through pretty immediately. I guess you could say immediately, somewhere around there. But
what
the question is, I don't know. It's a very packed, very full structure.
Oh, it's meaty, is what you're saying.
Immediately, yes, meaty. I can't say
chock full of like emotional goodness.
Chock full of,
there you go.
Yeah, chock full of meat.
Is it girthy too and veiny? I mean, what? Let's just go all in here, okay?
Is it
built for your pleasure and for hers?
Yeah. Is it full of ass cheeks? Is what I'm saying. No.
Oh my God.
Clapping cheeks, people.
Wow.
Nick took the jump into Willoughby there. We were on the edge, not making a full commitment. Nick said, let's go. Balls
Nick wants to ride the giant one-wheeled bike.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, but in all seriousness, I mean, this episode, what did you guys think of it? I know you guys have talked a little bit, but do you think this was a well thought out, well situated act that, like I said, we still have another act to go, but it's only like 6 minutes long, but it's actually the really cool combination to the episode. But what do you guys think it really works as a first act?
I love this episode for the good and the bad of it. And so, yeah, I'm a bad person to ask on this one because it is.
Well, let me ask you this: going in as like critiquing it, do you think it has enough there? Like taking the fandom out of it as a reviewer, do you think it works? That's the real question.
Yeah.
Do you think it fits? Like I can go into like Time Enough Last, and I think it's a great episode and have many problems with it. So I'm just curious if it works on a justifiable level for what it's doing. I guess
I personally think it does. For me, it's got a great build up. It's like. And it does have a twist that you have to really, I don't even know if you can see it coming so much. I didn't the first time I saw it, regarded it was as a fan. It wasn't as, someone that critiques. So I do have some blinders when it comes to this episode, though. I'm going to admit that freely, but
I thought.
Here it comes.
No, please do.
No, but seriously, I'm of two minds on this episode because on the surface, just the episode itself, taking it for what you see, what you get, the twist and all that happens at the end, not analyzing anything, it was fine. It was okay, cool. That it was not bad. It wasn't the greatest. It was just real above average. I'll give it that, but it wasn't great. But when you start to look into it And this isn't one of those things where you start to look into it afterwards. It is something you see during the episode. The subtext here is what really sells it for me.
Yeah.
The subtext of this episode, I think, I've already said this a few times, it's very important then, and it's very important now. It is still, and that's what I really liked about it. This topic, which I mean, I guess a lot of the topics in the Twilight Zone are still relevant to a degree, but this is a one topic. There just hasn't really been any movement. And I can speak to that myself. It is, I mean, people can say there's been movement, but you're full of shit. There really hasn't. They're not real, movement. I mean, the Twilight Zone is talked about, racism, sexism, all kinds of issues that are still talked about today. But I can honestly say with all those things and all the other things, we've seen movement with those. With this one, still the same issue. So it really hit home hard. And I really thought how they worked in all this subtext. And it wasn't one of those things where it's like, am I just looking into this too much? Is it really that? No, it's absolutely that. And I mean, we could
it's
talk
like
about
striking you in the face. It's so
yeah.
clear.
I mean, now, I mean, we can talk about whether he subconsciously wanted to get off at Willoughby or not, like we're going to talk about in a few minutes. What that is, that could be subjective, but when it comes to like what this episode's about, it is very, very clear, and it just goes from there. That aspect I really liked. I really thought this is a very important, I hate to use that word that sounds so pretentious, but I felt like this is an important episode, and I felt like that made the episode all the more better for me. I am the type of person that I can look at something and say, oh, I think this had a good message, but the execution was just kind of I think that knowing the message actually makes this better. And that is because the purpose of this is the message. It's and it's a pure message, and it's a good message. So going into it and realizing what that message is and seeing all that subtext really elevated this one even more for me. So I did really like this episode. Where it lies on the list, we'll get to for me. I mean, I don't know yet, but it is absolutely, it's above the middle. That's for damn sure, because it had I've got to see the list, but when we get to the end to make my final personal judgment, but I think it was up to this point and where we go from here, a really good episode. And I love the subtext. I love the subtext that we get in these episodes when there's something deeper going on there, and we get on these tirades about this, that, and the other, and what this meant and what that didn't. I love those type of episodes.
And this one definitely hits that like on the head.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it takes like, and again, I know I'm talking from a point of like a fan as well as trying to keep it as a reviewer, and I apologize for not balancing the two better. But for me, this it has no understood, and it's a good question to ask. But like, it does balance a lot of what makes a really, really good classic Twilight Zone episode. And like you said, Jacob, with the subtext in there and everything that you can pull from this, like you can watch it and every time you watch it, there's to some extent something new to see.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think the subtext also is multi-layered, because while I've been talking about it from the man's perspective, which I do think that that's a big part of this,
hugely,
it's not just that. You can also see the inability to be able to open up and feel comfortable in that and be vulnerable. But if you could just look at it as far as like a person being at their wits' end with their profession or just with life and not having anywhere to go, because there's plenty of women also that have been put in situations where they were just at their wits' end and they didn't feel like they had anywhere to go and they didn't know what to do. And in the end, in their minds, not really, but in their minds, is Willoughby. And I think that it speaks to everybody. It speaks to everybody. Yeah, sure, it can speak a bit more to this, or it could have more to say on a particular thing here and a particular thing there, but it can speak to everybody. It's not just like, oh, you ain't gonna get it if you're not a man and you've never felt anything. No, I think it talks to everybody. I really like that, and I really do think that is the main reason. I could be totally off the mark here, because when I read that this was Serling's favorite episode out of season 1, I was like, well, that's the main point of this. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he probably felt this way, because I'm sure all men did.
I will also add, just from the perspective of like, and I know you could take any of the characters in this and talk about how they exacerbated Gart's like
you said
thing.
baited.
I did say baited. Piss off. But you could even take it from the perspective of like, it's weird because like the secretary was like, oh, there's coffee for you, when he first comes out of the meeting. And, she was she seemed like a supportive, for a supportive person for him and stuff. And then later on, she's like, what was the guy, the boss's name, whatever it was, oh, well,
Mr.
Mr. Such and so, Misril wants to see you. Mr. Misril wants to see you. It was just like
that bitch.
That annoying, just bitchy person. And it's like, okay, you know what? You're not his wife. Because at first
she wouldn't stop. She kept on. I would have been like, shut the fuck up.
Let's actually talk about that, because that's the second act where he says a show with jazz push, and you guys have talked about it already, but the whole 2 phone situation, he's like one phone here, it's like having 2 pagers or whatever, and she's like stressing him out and stuff like that, and it just everything is just like she needs Ms. Rel to talk to, or Ms. Rel needs to talk to him about I think it's like commercials or whatever to be put in an ad, and he's like, fuck this, and he like hangs up the phones and he goes in the bathroom, and he's the only person in a Twilight Zone episode to just, probably not the only person, but
he destroyed the mirror.
He sees Triv and the push on the mirrors and stuff like that, and
I talked about socking him in the poos.
And
I wonder how they did that, because it didn't shatter. I mean, it shattered. Was that like some it had to have been like a fake mirror or something, but it looked like legit. He hit, that wasn't like a optical illusion. Like from a technical perspective, he like whatever that was, he broke it. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't like a real mirror. Maybe it was. That was hardcore back then.
It was.
I mean, this is where the WWE got their stuff from.
Yeah. I will also add, like, he leaves, like, after he gets out of the bathroom, by the way, personalized bathroom in an office, that's pretty freaking awesome. But he leaves the office, and like his secretary is gone, and it's like, so you didn't even stick around to see if he was okay. I mean, clearly he's going through something if he goes into his bathroom and breaks a freaking mirror.
Yeah, he's clearly not banging her.
No.
Or maybe they were and like had a falling out.
That's possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He didn't turn on his dictaphone didn't turn her on.
That's why she was getting on. She was like, miserable to see. Shut the fuck up. I mean, it was the 60s. He could have slapped her around. I'm sorry, I'm just joking. But
asshole.
but he like calls...
I'm not endorsing that, by the way, people.
But he like calls his wife, and his wife doesn't want to have anything with him, and she just hangs up on him.
He
He's
hangs
like,
up
fuck it.
Oh, dude, he's outrightly pleading with her to be there. And it's like, okay, whatever you feel, how often, like, you always think about those situations, like someone calls and the one time you treat them terribly is the one time they need you to not do that. And it's like, what kind of a person does that?
She treats him terribly every time, though. So it's
no, that's true.
Like, talk to her, she's just on the other end of the phone, just like, oh yeah. And he's just, what the fuck? What did I do? I'm going to Willoughby.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Okay, here's the question. So when he starts to see Willoughby, do you think subconsciously, and I know we've not gotten to that point yet, but do you think he knows what that is?
No,
I think I don't know. I'm of 2 minds of that as well. I think that maybe. I don't think the episode, once again, Twilight Zone shit, surface level, I don't think, no, he doesn't. But like, I think that maybe they're trying to like push you in the direction of maybe subconsciously he does. Because that leads back to earlier when I was saying he wanted to get off the train, but he didn't quite. He had a lot of hesitation. He was like, oh, I'm not quite ready. I want to maybe, try a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking that maybe somewhere in his subconscious, because I don't know if he's sleepwalking or what, but somewhere in his subconscious, he knew what Willoughby was. And, after all that happened and he got just shot down by everybody there at the end, he got on the train this time and said, yep, I'm going to ride that big wheeled bicycle in the sky.
So let's get to it. So let's get to the ending so we can really talk about it. So William's back on the train. He talks to the conductor again. He ends up falling asleep as always. And then for the last time he wakes up at Willoughby, he actually, gets up. The conductor's like, come with me, that type of thing. Because the conductor is apparently his guiding whatever. And
he's Mr. Pip.
Exactly. But he walks off the train, of course. And the first 2 people he meets, know his name, and they're little two kids, and he talks about he's going to go fishing with them at some point because they found a lot of fish. And then he meets the guy, of course, on the buggy who knows his name, says hello. Then he stalks him of course, Williams moves towards the band. And what's really kind of cool is the conductor of Willoughby train looks at the clock up on the station, and it of course fades to a lantern, a lantern and stuff like that. And this is where we learn that Williams has lost his nut. He screams Willoughby, and he jumps off a train and kills himself, as you do when you jump off a train, of course. And, they're talking about how he said Willoughby, he jumped off and he looked like he was under a lot of stress. And so the guards pick him up, or the ambulance comes by. I think it's an ambulance until I find out what it was. Picks him up, puts him into, the hearse or whatever. And as the door closes, it says Willoughby and Sons, a funeral home. So it was a hearse for the funeral home.
Yep.
So it's the name of Willoughby was the name. I don't know how he came up with Willoughby in his subconscious. Maybe he saw Willoughby and Son's funeral home somewhere when he was going home one day. It basically means that Willoughby was, to me personally, Willoughby was his kind of afterlife, his heaven, his moving on to a world that he really felt was going to be for him. It just took him jumping off a train and saying yippee-ki-yay, like in Doctor Strangelove or something like that. And it's a really crazy ending, but I think in his mind it was so stressed out that it was going to come to that conclusion eventually. But yeah. I mean, it's an all-timer when it comes to Twilight Zone conclusions. But Willoughby and Sons, a funeral home, that's a pretty crazy way to end an episode. So
I mean, if you were watching this movie or watching this episode for the first time, you're going along and, he decides to get off at Willoughby to go to the 1890s and be there, knowing what you do about Twilight Zone to this point. It's like, oh, it's a happy, it's a good ending, okay, when does the epilogue come up? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, he died? What? That whole bit, like that would throw people for a fucking loop.
It threw me for a loop.
Yeah,
I was not expecting that. I thought that was the end of the episode when it kind of like panned up to the clock and all that. I was like, okay, well, and I was sitting there thinking, I was like, that was fine. Okay, he got off and he's going to live in his alternate. Oh fuck, he's dead. Oh shit! Dark turn to detour for a moment. I found I guess it would be a deleted scene or something for this episode.
Oh, nice.
Of like apparently that happened between the train jumping. I guess it may be him jumping off the train or something. I mean, I'm sure it looks terrible from back then, but hang on, it's kind of low quality.
I'm sure it's probably like the jitterbug scene from whatchamacallit.
Yeah. Whatchamacallit.
It's
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, here it is.
I knew that was coming too.
Oh,
honestly, I was expecting like Paul Rudd doing the Mac and Me thing.
Anytime I think of that scene all the time, just for situations where I'm annoyed as fuck at people, because that scene is the story of my life at all times, where you're sitting there and you're with them and and you're cool and all this and everything's cool, but then they just won't fucking stop, and after a while you're just like, oh my fucking god. And I was like, when you were talking about him jumping off, I was like, ooh, I got something for this. I love that movie, and there are so many parts of my life that I envision as big Pee-wee's Big Adventure moments.
Understandable.
So anyway, in this episode, this is a conclusion. I asked you guys what you thought of it, how effective it was. Jacob, you said, the whole idea of just it. What'd you say? I even forgot what you said. But it's, but do you think it's justifiable do you think the idea of going to Willoughby and that being it, do you think that would have been a more perfect ending, or do you think this actually makes it for a Twilight Zone ending, a hard-hitting ending about a guy that just lost his shit and just, yippee-ki-yay motherfucker jumping off the train, that type of thing?
Well, it's got kind of like a a double Twilight Zone ending, because the ending of him just getting off and going, becoming one with Willoughby, one with Willoughby, is kind of Twilight Zone unto itself. So then it was a bit of a shock, at least for me, when it faded to him having jumped off the train. I was like, oh, a double twist. They double shamalama dingoed me. But that being said, I'm really happy they did, because that simple, 20-second or however long it was, 30-second ending there that they added totally changed the dynamic of a lot of what was going on in the episode, and also added a lot of layers and stuff to talk about. Because, I mean, like we said, we're still having the debate between the three of us is, did he know the whole time, at least subconsciously, that Willoughby was the end of the road? That, was it like a construct within his mind to help him deal with it? But I think he did. I mean, the way the episode goes along, and I think that added so much more to it. Like, it makes me look back at the episode and see certain aspects of it differently. Like when because I was kind of freaked. I was like, why is he freaking out about getting off this train? He's been thinking about this Willoughby place, like the second time he went, and he's been wanting to get off, and he clearly wants to get off there, at least to visit. But then right as he's about to get off, he starts losing his shit. And after seeing the ending, I'm like, oh, he probably knew, not consciously, but he knew, and he was really stressed about, I'm not quite ready to make the plunge. I'm going to give it one more go. But then all the fucks left, and he said, fuck this shit, I'm out. So I thought it was really well done. I like how they had the Willoughby brothers, or Willoughby and Sons, whatever it was, funeral home, and I don't know, it was pretty. I thought the ending was a great addition to the episode.
Yeah. And they didn't overplay it. They didn't explain that, you see, he, did the whole jump thing. I mean, they had the conductor saying what he saw, but they didn't to some extent, I know with Nightmare as a Child, that last little bit, we kind of felt like there was a little bit of extra hand holding.
Yeah,
they didn't
absolutely
do that with this, which was nice.
No. Well, also, I really like how that 30 seconds or so there at the end that they added suddenly takes this episode from 100% being, most likely being, something otherworldly or supernatural or something of that nature, and puts it into a perspective that maybe it wasn't. This could have just been all going on in his head, and we were just seeing it from his perspective. A very grounded episode about a guy dealing with mental distress and not knowing where to turn, and that's how he saw the world. He saw his out as this idyllic. I loved that. The more I talk about it, I love it even more.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you guys this question. The whole Willoughby and Friends, do you think it's a national or like a recognizable company? Like, how did he come up with Willoughby? That's my question. Like, what made him think of that instead of just like some other random place? Like, the fact that it's Willoughby and Company and Willoughby and Sons.
Well, he's in advertising, which I don't know if
that's
funeral
true.
homes
That's
have
true.
to advertise that much, but I mean, it may have just been a name he heard here or there. Like where I used to live, there was in fact a funeral home, and I'm not gonna say their name, but this particular name, I couldn't tell you why. Someone had said to me, I knew someone who unfortunately passed away, and that's where the funeral was taking place. And somebody says at this place. I don't pay attention to what's around me when I drive and stuff, so it takes me a while to learn areas I'm in. And they told me it was there, and I knew exactly where it was and what it was when they just said at this. They didn't say this funeral home. They just said the name, and I was like, oh yeah. And I was like, why do I know that? I've never been there. I mean, it's just like something I'd heard, local place. One of the larger local ones. It was just a place I heard, so it was kind of like in the back of my head. That information was there just to be used when I needed it, and I guess he took it and flipped it around, or it was a hell of a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's like J.G. Wentworth.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know what the fuck they do, but I know that name.
Oh man.
Or back in the 80s, I know it now, but Dianetics.
Oh yeah.
By L. Ron Hubbard. And I was like, I don't even know what the fuck that is, but I see that whole volcano commercial all the time in between Matlock episodes.
Or diabetes.
Yeah, diabetes. All these things. Yeah. It's one of those.
Okay, so with that said, that is the episode in a nutshell. I think we had a pretty good discussion about it, but I always have to ask, is there anything you guys want to add? Is there any other ideas and concepts that we miss or I missed that you wanted to talk about before we get into the actual list, the rankings list?
I think the music for this really, I don't know, like when it went to him talking about Willoughby when he's in his house with his wife trying to explain stuff, I really appreciated like the way the music changed.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was some they weren't like, you know, the most amazing music choices in the world, but I think that they worked really well for what needed to be conveyed.
Jacob,
I don't remember. Well, no, I mean, I think I talk a lot, so I've said enough. But yeah, I thought it was a great episode. The subtext is what really sold it for me, though.
Yeah,
and really, it is one of those situations I do think that where the subtext makes the episode or makes the story. And a lot of times I'll see things where people are pushing a message, and it kind of irritates me. And I'm like, stop selling me on have a good story and then work your message in there. I think that this is one of the few situations where the message was integral to the story and elevated the story up.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Yeah, I would agree. So
real quick, did we do the closing narration?
No.
Oh shit.
I knew there was a reason she was here, even though she was here before me. Willoughby. Maybe it's wishful thinking nestled inside a hidden part of a man's mind. Or maybe it's the last stop in the vast design of things. Or perhaps for a man like Mr. Gart Williams, who climbed on a world that went by too fast, it's a place around the bend he could jump off. Willoughby, whatever it is, it comes with sunlight and serenity and is a part of the Twilight Zone.
Bum, bum, bum. No.
Just for note, if I ever have to choose, I will choose Willoughby over Allergy as a place to go any day of the week.
Exactly.
Fair.
Okay. With that said, let's go and do the ultimate Twilight Zone list that no one should ever or will ever copy because we are the most awesomest podcast ever. Is this a top 10 episode?
Without doubt.
I think it's better than Perchance to Dream.
we're just gonna knock that down till like eventually hits like 143 or something.
Yeah, I do. I think looking at the list, yeah, I think this is a top 10 episode in my opinion.
Where in the top 10 though?
See, I gotta follow you. Give me a starting point.
You know what? And I'm gonna you know how
She's
I feel about this
one.
episode. Actually, I was gonna go with like between 2 and 3.
Oh, look at that.
But that's me. Again, I'm coming at this from a place of like, this is one of my all-time faves. And I'm not one to say a lot about all-time faves, but yeah, this one is one of the few that I just adore.
See, I think Walking Distance is way better than this episode. Just on.
Oh my God, no!
Hey, real quick before we go there, let me throw in some more monkey wrenches. Because you've talked about how much you like the episode, and you said a lot of points. What is the one thing about this episode, or I don't know, one thing? What is it about this episode? Just curious, since this is one of your all-time faves, that makes this, that elevates it above all that. What is it that resonates with you so much that makes you say this is like my number 1 or 2 or 3?
There's been a lot of times in my life, and not. I say this taking away the last 30 seconds. But then adding the 30 seconds back in. For me personally, it was always that nostalgia of finding some place where that's perfect and that's slowed down and that you can feel like you belong. But again, that's not taking into account Willoughby being deaf. So that was a lot of it. It was, I don't know, there was a lot of times in life where I felt like just stressed to the max where you couldn't take more. And just escaping to some place like that, but not ultimately stepping off the train and, you know, ending up, well, you know,
it could signify, I mean, Willoughby could signify not just death. I guess it could just signify like being at your wit's end and
and that's been a lot
change possibly.
That's been a lot in my life. It's also too just the fact that I've watched this on so many Twilight Zone marathons and I never get sick of it. It's one of those that's consistently entertaining. There's never been a time where I haven't walked away with something new from it.
Sure.
And I don't know how to, I don't know. It's like one of those, it's not a comfortable episode, but it's always one of those that I can go back to and watch, and it puts me into that place where it reminds me about what I love about the Twilight Zone.
Did you ever
good?
Well, I was just saying, did you ever pick up on any of the points that we were making today, or like
Um,
the things about the male centric side of any of it? Did you ever pick up on any of that?
from the
A female
perspective of letting yourself feel vulnerable, like dropping your armor, or
Yeah.
being able to drop your armor but feel like you can't because you always got to have your your sword and shield ready to take on whatever's coming because
Mhm.
no one gives a fuck. Yeah, I've not to the extent that we've talked about it here,
Sure.
but generally, yeah, I definitely have had that where you that fear of dropping your vulnerable or being vulnerable because no one will understand.
And that's what I was talking about, man. That's what I liked. One of the things, there's a lot of things, but this is one of the things I liked so much about it. While from my perspective and from a male, I have a place to turn and all this and that, and this particular
Mhm.
thing. On the flip side of that, you can look at it. It touches on so many things within that. It has a lot of range when it comes to that, because I mean, it's not just men that feel that way. There's women who feel that way as well, as you mentioned, that hey, they have nowhere to turn. They don't need to let down their armor either. I mean, we could talk about the social implications about how, it's more okay for this or that. It doesn't matter if it's more okay. There are plenty of, I know I've said male a lot, but that's,
No,
it's
but
coming from my
it's
perspective.
right.
There's
right.
plenty of women out there. I've known some of them. I'm married to one of them who have felt that way at points in their life where they couldn't take their wall down, let their
No.
armor off, because they were supposed to be a certain way. And I really appreciated that subtlety. Well, maybe it wasn't always so subtle, but those details, and how
Yeah.
this episode was very like, it was talking about a really important thing, but it opened it up in a way that it was extremely broad, but very
Mhm.
specific in some things, but broad at the same time. I thought it was really smartly done.
It's something that everyone can experience because you get a lot of women who, and not that, again, it's a thing that has gotten better with time if you're female, but it's also something that you still run into. You're not allowed to show weakness. If someone sees, I know a lot of guys that would say, oh, if oh, you're just a typical chick, you emotional and all the rest. I mean,
It's like the
if
opposite.
if you're not allowed to show it, because if you are, oh, you're just you're just female, you're just a woman, all that bullshit. You can't do the job as well because you're emotional, or you can't, whatever it is.
I've heard that. I've heard people say shit like that before. No shit. People I've worked with shoulder to shoulder before, that we were at the same level and sitting there like making hiring decisions. It's crazy. And this is within the past less than 10 years, sitting there with someone that I'm making a hiring decision with or helping them with, and they have made that point. And it's funny the way that they'll actually like present it like, oh, well, I'm sure she'd be great, but they get real emotional, all this and that, and the women in it. I was like, dude, really? I don't give a shit about that. Are they going to do the job right? But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like women. If you're a woman, the stereotype is you're just, that's why you're doing it, because you're a woman, so they don't take you seriously for that.
Yeah.
If you're a man, it's, you're being a whiny bitch, so they don't take you seriously for that. It's like we're all having a similar struggle for,
exactly
different being looked at differently, I guess.
The mid or the outcome is the same, but the execution on either side, generally speaking, can be different. Because I think it does, there are women who are absolute hard asses, and they can't drop it, and they can't drop it either. But it's a unique experience to every person. But you're right, it's a very broad topic. It's a very specific experience, but it's a very human experience.
Sure. And that, I mean, take it a little bit further, like with women, I think you kind of said something there that I don't think I elaborated on. I kind of said it a second ago. When women open up and become vulnerable, yeah, it's more accepted, but I feel like people don't take it as serious.
No.
They it's like the reason you're doing it is just because you're a woman. But then on the flip side of that, it's like, who can be vulnerable here and get taken seriously? Because if a man does it, it's like, oh my God, you pansy bitch.
On the female side, it's expected, and you're, 100%, and that's what it comes down to. And it's,
you get a lot of, oh honey, oh sweetie, I know.
Yeah, exactly. You get the head pat, and then you move on, and it's like, you're not really, Anyway,
you don't give a shit.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing. Again, it's a human experience. It's something we've all had in some way, shape, or form. And for as much progression as we've had over the past 60 years, there's a lot of areas, as you said, that don't progress because we hold on to a lot of that old shit.
Yeah. I mean, And I know I kind of derailed our that's what I do, like ranking here, but I was just curious because I was wondering how from your perspective how you took it. That's what I like that about this episode. I've said it, but I'll say it again. Two people come at it and we're seeing the same thing, but from a different perspective, and that can just like make a not a difference, but just like have two different perspectives, and I think that's really cool.
Nick, how about you? What are your thoughts? We've been kind of monopolizing conversation here. What are your thoughts? Just on the episode
Well, I mean,
itself.
Trev, I
Nick
gotta
said,
ask
"You all a bunch of whiny bitches. Shut up."
I'm gonna take this
Cry
back
into
to the
your
60s.
pillow. Exactly.
No, what I'm gonna ask is, do you have that love for this more than One for the Angels?
It's a different kind of love. This one,
But you talked about but that's the thing. You talk about how One for the Angels is like one of your favorite episodes of all time. And I do agree this is a top 10 episode, but the question remains is I don't think this is as good as the top 4, but we can work around, 5 through 10, 1, 2, and 3. It's just those four episodes are just they're such.
I understand.
Yeah, that's where I look at it. I mean, I could put it at number 5, or you want to go, whatever. That's the reason I ask is, do you think it's, when it comes to like, how, because you can say that, it's a different kind of episode, but if you were to go into it, do you feel that this is an episode that is more impactful than One for the Angels, or do you think it's below that, or how do you feel?
I'm a sappy bitch, so One for the Angels will always speak to me on that part. And I apologize. I don't mean to make it about me by any stretch.
It's all your fault, man. It's all your
I
fault.
know.
It's always
Oh,
Jason's
that's-
fault, but it's always your fault.
It's always my fault. It's all good.
I guess what makes this one, like I say, I'm a sappy bitch. One for the Angels strikes that chord for me in a different way because it does have that kind of positive ending. Had this one not gone out the way it did in the last 30 seconds or minute or whatever, it would have been a good episode, but it would have been very run-of-the-mill Twilight Zone. Subtext, like just looking at the episode, not looking at subtext. Because of the subtext of this, because it's still something that so resonates today, because of those last 30 seconds, I do believe that it may not be number 2 or 3, but it is in that it's above a Time Enough at Last, because as good as Time Enough at Last is, it comes down to that last act or that last bit.
I typically don't like pick my starting point. I wait for you guys to do it, and then I kind of work from there. But as I'm sitting here looking at the list, I know you guys are talking about Time Enough at Last and One for the Angels, and Triv loves One for the Angels and loves this episode. And where are we going to put it? No, you're fine. No. I'm not saying that a bad thing. I'm saying that's where we're at. And I honestly, when I watched this earlier today, I gave a cursory thought to where would it go when we get to this point. And I was like, yeah, probably 10, 11, 12, maybe middle. I still think is that the middle, which I guess it kind of is. 15 is the middle.
Yeah.
It's like probably a little bit above middle, but not top 10, just right in there, 11, 12-ish. But as we sit here and talk about it, and as I dissect it more and I think about it more, I like it more. And there's so many little details about this episode that really speak to me. And I think it was really smart in the way that it speaks to a lot of people. And honestly, for me, the one that's holding me up where I'm at, because I just kind of go up the line and I'm like, did I like it more than this one? Yes, no. Did I like it more than that one? I just keep going until I get to one that I'm like struggling with, would be the Purple Testament. I'm like,
that's fair.
That far up. Like I love the Nightmare as a Child. I think Nightmare as a Child, we talked about that last week. That had a hell of a subtext as well. Not so subtle. Neither was this, but it had an important thing going on there as well. But not that that's not important, but I just feel like this is some deep rooted important shit right here. Mm-hmm. This episode deals with some stuff that I don't think in 60 years from now is going to be fixed. I think people are going to still be struggling with this issue in 60 more years. I think this is one of those things that if it ever goes away or stops or gets better, it's going to take a really long time, because I don't see it making much of a difference or make much of a change. It's one of those weird things that we all know is an issue, but nothing's changing about it. So that really puts it up there. Purple Testament I thought was fantastic, but a lot of that was the acting. As far as the message of that episode, I mean, from what I remember, it had a little bit of one, but really I'm kind of going towards putting it above Purple Testament. And then I honestly like Purple Testament more than Walking Distance So kind of right there in the number 2 to 3 spot. I don't know where you guys stand with that. Nick, I don't think so. I think he's about to like reach to the screen and grab me and get the fuck off my podcast, bitch.
Well,
Nobody gives a shit about your feelings. Man up, drop your balls and go chop some wood, motherfucker.
Go build your chicken coop.
Jesus Christ.
Already built that. Part of it.
Go build a bigger chicken coop.
Go milk a fucking cow or something. God damn.
Go milk a cat, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, I have nipples, Greg. Can you milk me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can. He'll milk you like. But as I look at it, I really
this
do.
is like the first time we disagreed.
Further and further up on the.
He's like further
number 1.
that will reach you. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I just feel like 4 through 1 are just they're just like top tier episodes. And I'm not saying this isn't a top tier episode because we're gonna put it in the top 10, but I would say it's underneath Nightmare as a Child, but that's just me and my thinking about what we talked about in the last week's episode.
No, that's fair, and that's important to have those distinctions too.
But is the majority rules. So if I'm not saying that like we'll put it wherever, but Triv, it's basically up to you at this point.
Oh, for God's sake, dude, that's not fair. I started by saying where I thought it was supposed to be, and I agreed with, or Jacob kind of agreed with me. So yeah, this is. I mean,
do you? Okay, so you guys want it? Do you think it's?
I was just gonna say because Purple Testament kind of. I mean, that was the early-ish on one, and kind of blew me away. I think we were all kind of taken back with this, that, the other. We just watched Nightmare as a Child, and we'll skip over that one for just a second. Go to Purple Testament. It's been up there in that top 3 for a while, and I love that episode. I was one of the big proponents of saying yes, this one needs to be on up there. I think it was at number 2 for quite a while. What is it about that particular episode that you put a one? I mean, I know the acting, we talked about the performances in that are great. They are like cinematic level, but what else is it about that episode that really puts it above, say, something like this episode?
It was Nan Adams taking out the main guy at the
end. I just think War
around took his ass out of the train.
That's true. It wasn't actually Willoughby. He was saying Nan Adams as he jumped out, but
yeah.
No, I think in the end, I think Purple Testament is a war episode, and I think that kind of took me by surprise, to be fairly honest. But I don't know. It's hard to decipher, like when you get into the top 10, where to really kind of configure it, because it's like these episodes are so almost perfect in their own storytelling aspect that when a new episode that comes in, that yes, we talked, probably a good hour about just the kind of the before the end of the act break, that it brings up that quality of level, but it's hard to justify putting it above Purple Testament just because of how impactful it is about people and war and how it felt realistic in its nature and how it felt, almost like a non-Twilight Zone episode. And I think that's just something truly special. Yeah. Walking Distance is a very nostalgic episode in the sense of just going back to your youth. And like I said, I can't go Monsters Do on Maple Street because I think that's just an iconic episode. But
Purple Testament, I mean, I thought I sit here and think about it. I think Purple Testament, just viewing the episode, no subtext, no looking at all that stuff. Purple Testament is a more solid episode than this one. Mm-hmm. This one it's fine, but just that right. Viewing what we're seeing on screen, that's it. Purple Testament is a winner there, but Purple Testament, well, all these episodes have some type of subtext. I don't think it kind of pales in comparison to the subtext that this one has. This one has a whole lot of subtext. And Purple Testament, so it's kind of like, which one is it? The surface level, the execution, I guess we'll say, or the subtext? Which one trumps which? And I'm not really sure when it comes to that. And when it comes to Walking Distance, as you guys said, it's nostalgic. This was before my time. I didn't have a problem with Walking Distance. The nostalgia for going back to your childhood. I had a shit childhood, so maybe I don't have that nostalgia. So me personally, I don't have a problem with it being there. I probably wouldn't have Walking Distance at number 2. So that's why, maybe that is why I'm kind of like, 2 and 3 is because Walking Distance doesn't hold that same. And I wasn't here to talk about it either. Maybe if I was here to talk about it, may have changed my opinion about it. But I don't know. I am cool right in there in that top 5. If it were me, if you just said you were the final say, you do it, no other outside influence, I would be struggling with 3 and 4 because I would be struggling with is this better than Purple Testament or not?
Okay, so let's do this.
I have one more thing, and I'm gonna drop a bomb on you, Nick.
Uh-oh.
Wait,
Rod
hold on.
Serling's favorite episode.
Oh no. Oh no, she did it. Oh no.
Yes, I did.
She blew
Boom.
this shit the fuck up, man.
But with that said, Triv, do you want it above Purple Testament or below Purple Testament?
I'm not making the final damn judgment.
Hey, you said you're dropping the
Oh,
bomb.
fuck a duck. Okay,
Trev
fine.
loves being above the purple testicle. Okay.
I just brought out my chest congestion bomb pills. So
Damn it. Okay. I'm not good at decisions. I dropped the bomb because I think it's important to keep in mind that it is what it is. And I mean, what do you say? That we are not under Rod Serling's mandates. It's the three of us and our own individual our own individual things that brought us to this. It's an episode that resonated hard with Jacob. It resonated pretty hardcore with me. It didn't hit you as hard, Nick, because you had those same experiences with Purple Testament, Nightmare as a Child, Walking Distance, Monsters Are Due in Maple Street. So I can't decide that.
I'm just stuck on Purple Testament in this because I can't decide. 1 minute I'm like, oh well, Purple Testament, better execution. Yeah, it deserves where it's at, and this should go under that. Then I'm like, yeah, but man, this subtext. Oh man, that's more. I don't know. Somebody make a decision. I'm being indecisive.
Can we say 3 point, or can we do a tie at 3?
3.5. I'm
Exactly.
in all honesty, guys, I am cool. That 3, 4, 5 area, like I said, I'm cool with it.
I'm already configuring the list. So we're going to number 3. Fuck it.
Holy shit.
Snap.
You mean I actually won Nick over to my side? Holy balls! If I could raise my arms, I would. I'd do the Numa
No,
dance.
I'm just a lot of times I'm doing it because I want to make sure that you guys. I love Nightmare as a Child, but the more and more you guys talk about it, the more and more it's an episode. This is why I like doing this podcast, because this is what we can do. We can talk these episodes down, which is even having this be one of my favorite series of all time. There's so much that you miss without discussing it. Like, that's
Sure.
why I asked you to come on, Triv, because you love Twilight Zone. That's why I asked Jacob to come on after 10 episodes, because we needed somebody to crack the whip. Or actually, I think Triv does that. But no, in all seriousness, it's just the series is just so great at what it does, and I
think they are a battle of the subtext, and it's like which one is. I struggle to say more important because I'm like they're both important. Which one resonates more? Which one is worthy? Both of them are. That's why I think I struggle with those two. However, I will say that this one probably resonates firsthand with more people than Nightmare as a Child. I think that more people will experience what this episode is trying to talk about than what Nightmare as a Child is trying to talk about.
Yeah.
Or at least I hate to say I hope so, but I mean, Nightmare as a Child is kind of fucked up.
I think this one is going to be something that people are more aware of. Like
Yeah.
a lot of times, like we said last week, it's easy to block that stuff out, to rationalize. I mean, there's a lot of people that are abused as kids and don't really see the kind of things that they go through until they're adults. So I do think that plays in too. But yeah, it's not subtle by any stretch, but it is kind of subtle.
Yeah.
In the way that they do it. So
It's not subtle in its initial approach, but then you find a whole lot of subtleties within that.
It's like breaking a geode open, and the closer you look in, the more that you see.
Yeah,
exactly.
See, that's why we got her here. But yeah, I just think that this one will resonate with more people personally, because like I said, I think more, not that people don't experience that type of trauma from Nightmare as a Child, but I think just about everybody at some point in time has experienced this type of situation to a degree, just being overloaded and too much on your shoulders and not knowing what to do. I mean, I don't think everybody picks Willoughby, but just being kind of at your wit's end. Everybody hits that at some point in time.
Okay, so new number 3 is A Stop at Willoughby. Number 30, we are officially at 30. The Fever knocked off the list to its own list, so it's in page 2 of the Twilight Zone. I'm trying to spread that out so I have enough time to put that in the actual video. And number 1, still Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. So the last few episodes have been pretty good, and Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. But with that said, that'll do it for our episode, which is Stop at Willoughby. And the next episode is season 1, episode 31, which is called The Chaser. This is an episode I know very well. I don't know if it's that great, but I know it and I've seen it. It's a guilty pleasure type episode.
Nice.
But it stars George Grizzard, John McIntyre, and Patricia Barry. And that will be on the next episode. But with that said, that'll be it. That'll be our take on season 1, episode 30, a Stop at Willoughby. Just forgot the name. Triv. Yeah, I know.
It's okay.
Triv, I'm losing my mind. If you want to reconfigure my mind in your YouTube channel, or if they just want to learn about your YouTube channel, where can they find you?
Well, if you need to jump off at a stop along the way, Trivial Theater is a good place to do that. Please don't show up mangled and or maimed, because I don't have facilities on hand to keep you back to where you need to be. But what I do offer is random, obscure, and straight up bad movies, or reviews of them at least. So definitely stop by the YouTube channel and say hi. You can also see me on Twitter at trivia_check.
It's so elegant.
I know, right?
I try.
She took that intro and just rolled with it.
But as we Thomas the Tank Engine this train along, we stop at, of course, the Jar and Jag Theater. And Jacob, where can they find your content?
I'm nowhere near as elegant as Triv was with her.
You made
her
up for it
working
with
all
the
that
rest
together.
of this.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I has YouTube channel where I review movies.
We're in Bumpkin Town
every now and then. Jacob Anders Reviews. That's my main channel. Jacob Anders Gaming. Very original naming conventions, I know. That's my gaming channel I'm trying to get started. And I'm also on Twitter at RedNeville2. And I have been, but I'm not focusing, putting a bit more into TikTok now too, because that's what all the cool kids are doing. And I'm hip with the kids and the times.
Hello.
Find me over there at, can you guess where? Jacob Anders Reviews.
Woo-hoo.
On TikTok. Yeah. And you can't change your name on TikTok apparently, or if you can, I'm too much of a fucking boomer to figure it out, because I just wanted to make it Jacob Anders, but I made it Jacob Anders Reviews at some point. Anyway, check me out on any of those places. That's where I put content and stuff. And of course, I'm here at Movie Emporium once a week.
Yay.
Every Monday.
Exactly. And with that said, the train's going to officially stop at Movie Emporium. That's where you can reach out and find my content, reviews, TV, movie, and all that good stuff. Also, once again, we're on Apple Podcasts, as well as Google Play Podcasts, as well as Amazon Music Podcasts, all that good stuff. Rate, subscribe, and star. If you just like to listen to us BS, in talking form, that's where you can find us. But otherwise, you can find the rest on my channel. And with that said, that'll do it. And we're out. And for myself, Jacob, and Triv, we'll see you guys next time in the Twilight Zone. Peace out.
Peace, love. This peace.
Revenge of the Shogun Women 3D.
Ooh, sounds sexy. Lots of snoo going on there.
Killer's Kiss.
What is it? What are these?
This is Stanley Kubrick's Killer's Kiss.
Ah, interesting.
1955.
That makes sense. Given the era, that's
Brilliant.
probably B movie. We lost you after
Yeah.
you said he's very, and then it cut out.
Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know what I say. I say words. Things come out, and he's very, I don't know. He's a pretty good guy. He has quite the vocabulary.